Bereshut Rabotenu, with permission of the esteemed guests. First, Dale and Marilyn, I want to tell you, thank you for throwing this party. What they say is, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. So I look at the energy and the passion late at night at the seaport, and I hope you can feel what this is about, because we've all been to a lot of dinners. But it's pretty special to see who showed up to say kol hakavod to the two of you and to your beautiful families. So congratulations. This weekend's show, we're going to read the parsha called Shlach Lecha. The chapters in Sefer Bamidbar in the book of, what's it called? Numbers. Sorry. Yep. Anyways, in Sefer Bamidbar, the details the mission of the 12 who spied out the land of Israel on behalf of the Israelite nation, which was then camped in the desert. Camped in the desert, wondering about a land promised, but as yet not experienced. Moshe, the leader of the Jewish people, chooses 12 leaders to spy out the land, and he gave them instructions for their missions. He tells them, spy out the land, and then report back. He tells them how to do it and what to look for, including this. He says, tell us about the land when you return. Pasuk says, U'ma ha'aretz asher hu yoshev. Tell me a little bit about this land that you're coming to. Hatovahi u'ra'ah. Is it a good land or is it bad? The question is the land good? Now, perhaps that question was once relevant in this community. Perhaps there was a time, maybe even not so long ago, when we wondered, some of us out loud, could we build and staff and animate a Reform Movement day school? Perhaps you wondered, before Rashi graduated, students like the alum we saw tonight and the students that were such powerful, personable greeters to us tonight, these powerful forces. Perhaps you wondered, before we graduated students like those, before Rashi attracted families like yours, before Rashi employed master educators in math and science, the arts, Judaic studies, perhaps you wondered. But there's no room for such questions anymore. Not here, not tonight, not for us. Like Barry said, look around you. Who are these spies that were sent to discover the truth of the promised land? The Torah describes them as distinguished leaders. Okay, I introduced to you my guest tonight at dinner, Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir. Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir was born in a place called Troyes in France in the year 1085. He died in the year 1158. Troyes is a real place in France. It's got outlet malls if you're interested today. It wasn't, not so much then. Not so much then. Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir's mom's name was Yocheved. His mom was Yocheved. Yocheved's dad was another rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Itzachi. You know Rabbi Shlomo Itzachi. You named a school after him. You called the school Rashi. Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir is the Rashbam. He's Rashi's grandson. He was an inheritor of tradition from his grandfather, and importantly, he was an innovator on his own, just like the women who stood here and talked about those justice programs that they created, an inheritor of a tradition and a creator of their own. The Rashbam has two roles for us tonight. First, I want him to tell us a little bit about the spies, and then, even more importantly, I invited the Rashbam to sit with my parents and me here at the seaport to remind us by his very presence of our challenge and our purpose within this vibrant and open and extraordinary community. In his first role as Master of Insight, as a student educated by his grandfather, Rashi, the Rashbam wants us to know that however it turned out in the end, however this mission turned out, and you'll read in the Parsha, it didn't turn out well. They brought back bad news and it didn't go well. Still, he says of these 12, he describes them as volunteers, brave, courageous people who took upon themselves a very hard task to go to a place that had been promised and described but never seen. It was a recon mission. It was a seyeret. It was a special unit of the Jewish people. They stood forward with courage, and they went to find out voluntarily. Brave leaders. Our school, I say our school, right? I'm the chairman of the board of the Maimonides School. I say our school, and I mean it. Our school has been blessed from the very beginning with men and women brave and sure and faithful who were and still are willing to lead, to go first, to volunteer, to lead us from and through uncertainty and doubt to a good land. We honor tonight a kahal of such leaders, from Dale and Marilyn to the faculty that you acknowledge so beautifully, to the alumni that have stood before us, and the students that are in our midst, and I add all of you. Yeah, I incorporate not by reference, the lawyers say. I incorporate by line of sight. I add all of you to this list of the honored, you who celebrate tonight the reality that is the Rashi School, and you who dare by your presence to insist that what is good can endure and become even greater. For you and for me, the question that Moshe posed, is the land good? That's a question for a prior generation. For this generation, the one that lives on the new campus, the one that glows from the light of a dedicated faculty that's blessed with alumni, faculty, administrators, and a community of committed volunteers, we know the answer to Moshe's question. We know, our eyes see, our souls feel, and our hearts are filled with the notion of the great good that is Rashi School. Is the land good? This is not our question. For us, given that the land is good, in fact, as it says in Bereshit, it's not just good, it's very good. We need to ask, what's it take to ensure that the land remains good for the generations that follow? What can we do to make the land grow stronger, both from within and from without? How do we sustain and elevate the goodness of Rashi so our grandchildren, like Rashi, remember the Rashbam? How can we be sure that our grandchildren have a worthy Jewish future to inherit through their generations? We are not asked to imagine Rashi, we can see it. We're asked instead to sustain the energy and the vision, to refine it, to raise it up, to drive it forward. And I mean real tachlis here, the same kind of tachlis that raised the money for the campus, that pays for music and art and sport and Judaic studies, that invested the Peerless Excellence Funds to make Rashi a Peerless Academy, which it is, tachlis. What is asked of us is equally concrete and yet differently daunting. We have to build our school from within, which means we must build the school's enrollment. You know how many kids we have coming to kindergarten next year? We have 44 kids coming into the kindergarten next year. That doesn't happen by accident, that happens by hard work, but it only can happen if there's something to offer, if there's a vision that's real and concrete that will cause parents to volunteer, to opt in, to dare forward. In the parsha we read the Shabbat, the spies bring back a message of fear from this land not seen, and they scare away the broad populace. We know a different reality. Our kids graduate from Rashi with excellence, and they go on to excellence. And so I ask you, why are so few families still sending their kids to Rashi? You can tell me it's expensive, and I know it is. We struggle to raise $1.4 million a year in tuition sustainability for every parent, because how could we possibly say to a Jewish child, there's no room here because we can't afford it? It's impossible. But by the way, that's not the whole story, because the parents that are sending their kids to brilliant independent schools are paying at least as much as we ask, and then some more. So it's not simply a matter of cost, even though cost is a real issue. It sure as hell is not. That's French, sorry. I'm getting on the plane and go to Israel in a few minutes, and so I'm kind of fired up. I'm going home, and I'm excited. It isn't the quality of our education experience that's keeping people away. It isn't, because ours is measurably excellent. We have fact. It's not fiction. It's not a promised land. It's a reality. Part of why some don't enroll is because of how the school fits into its broader community. In order to build the school's enrollment, we must invest concretely to build a community around the school. We need to make day school education the expectation and the aspiration within every reform shul in Greater Boston, rather than a special minority case for only the most dedicated. We have to make people want it. We need more good kids in this school, which means we must have more families who choose day school over independent school, period. That's a hard choice, it's a real choice, and we've got to make parents make that choice. We have to. How can we entice these families? Look, for sure, we need to make adult learning accessible and inspiring for all the potential parents and grandparents. When Debbie and I sent our kids, our little kids swallowed up by a yellow school bus, I told you that story. The first time they swallowed up my little 25-year-old who's finished his first year at law school at NYU this year, who thinks his job is to save the whole damn world, right? When the school bus swallowed him up to take him to Schechter, we were scared to death on every dimension you can imagine, as every first parent is, but we had an extra dimension because Debbie and I didn't go to day school. Debbie and I weren't literate Jews in the broadest sense of the word. And that was terribly intimidating to have a kid come home who knew things that we didn't know. Adult learning is not a nice thing to have. It's an imperative. We know the facts are clear. When adult Jews learn, then Jewish day school enrollments change. That ain't science fiction, that's science fact. It's true. And so we have to make adult learning available. And so I ask you the question, does your shul host Mea or Ikarim? And if it doesn't, it needs to. And who's going to fix that if not you and me? We have to invest in support services, from special needs instruction to broad scholarship. And as a community, by the way, we are investing. CJP is the biggest annual investor in Rashi, as CJP is in all of the day schools in Greater Boston. Day school activists, like Barry said earlier, from this community are on the board of CJP, and they're pushing hard. So I tell you, join them in their work first, right? I've not worked for anybody. I committed to one notion, which is the Jewish community. And so when I tell you, please, respectfully, make sure that every single person here makes a contribution to the CJP annual campaign. I'm not a fundraiser for CJP. I'm a chassid. I'm a fiery guy for the future of the Jewish people. And I know that if you don't invest in the community, you don't have a voice or a vote. And day schools need your voice and your vote. And so the way you get a voice and a vote is you invest in the annual campaign, and then you show up and you say, this is a priority that matters to me. It's not on Barry's shoulders. Even as strong and broad as they are, it's on yours and mine. And so we have to do that. The school prospers. I'll say one more challenging thing, and even maybe a few more. Even as we build enrollment in our school, we strengthen it from within and from without. More is demanded of us, more, right? Daniel is 25, right? Sam is 23, and Noah is 20. And so I want to let you in on the incremental way the Jewish community lies to you. It's stunning, right? They tell you as a prospective day school parent, if you only send your kid to preschool, you'll learn how to light the candles. It'll be great. And then you do that, and it is great. And they say, well, there's also, kindergarten is an imperative. You got to do that. And then you get through middle school, and you, like Marilyn said, sometimes you survive it, and sometimes you don't. You think, oh, thank God. No, that is halfway to heaven, as Bruce Springsteen was saying, just a mile out of hell, right? In the context of forming Jewish identity, we have got to we have to commit to the notion that when a Jewish child is born, she's begun a lifetime learning experience that goes through the Rashi school to the Gann Academy. Your kids have to go to the Gann Academy. They have to. And by the way, when they finish up their year at the Gann Academy, think, oh my God, that tuition, oh my God, the challenging notions they thought. Take it deep. Don't spend a lot of time on that because they're packing their bag to go to Israel. And so if you spend a ton of time saying, oh, thank God that's over, you're going to miss them. And then they're going to be in Israel living an engaged Jewish life in Israel, because an engaged Jewish life in Israel is different than anything in Galut. It is, because Jewish is everything. It's everywhere. It's the food. It's the music. It's the mishigas. It's the drunk. It's the thief. It's the whore. It's powerful. And your kids need this experience. They do. They'll come back and they'll come back and you think, okay, finally I got my kid back. No, you didn't. Your kid is going to college. And because your kid went to Rashi, they're going to a prestigious college because they learned reading, writing, and arithmetic and Rashi. That's the Rashi commentator, not the school. And they're all ready to make something of their lives. And they go to a college campus and they find what? They find blah. No, they can't. They have to find a birthright experience, or they have to find a Hillel that's engaged. They have to find, and by the way, your kids will be better prepared for the diverse Jewish voice on campus than kids that don't come from a community as open and vibrant as yours is. And so think about it, please, because it is necessary but not sufficient that every single child in this community that needs and wants a Rashi education gets one. It's necessary but not sufficient. We have to build a lifetime of learning for our children and for us. Nothing less is required of us. We are the generation whose task is not to spy out the land, but to ensure its greatness for generations. Rashi's built. Now we need to guarantee our grandchildren's Jewish future. Crazy? Sure. But in this audience, I don't even feel half hesitation to be crazy because you built this school. You created it. Those who built Rashi bequeath to us the imperative to ensure that the land goes from good to great. To accomplish this, we need to strengthen the whole system, and this is our challenge. So look, building a worthy Jewish future falls to the leaders of every generation. That's the other way the Jewish community lies to you. Barry says it doesn't take that much time. Be the chairman of the community. It's not much asked of you. John Stanley's thinking, whoa, I heard that line before. Yes, you did, right? Because that's the way the Jewish community has to operate. Look around. You think, my mom said to me, look at all these people. I said, it's really wonderful. You know what? What's missing? One more. Right? One more. We're one short. Like it or not, the Rashbam's understanding of the spies as volunteers who gave of themselves to the community is your lot. Mine too. Who else is going to ensure that the transformative energy that Rashi School has unleashed sustains and ultimately transforms if it's not you and me? And so I ask respectfully if you'll join me and think hard tonight about what it means to invest, to create and ensure a worthy Jewish future in this special and blessed community. I thank you for all that you do for Rashi, and still, I want to share one more story with you. This one is from a tractate of the Babylonian Talmud called Masechet Kala. It's called the minor tractates of the Babylonian Talmud. Now, it has a particular relevance to me, Masechet Kala, you got that? Because your 8th grader will eventually be my 23-year-old who's engaged to be married, and so Masechet Kala is one of those things like, I decided I should learn that one because my kids get married. I cannot believe this. Anyways, it may be a minor tractate, it ain't a minor experience. Michael Fries and I were talking about that. He says I'll survive, and I'm counting on that. In the second, it's only 2 prakimot, only 2 chapters long. In the second parak, there's a story told that I want to share with you. It was said of Rabbi Tarfon that he was a very wealthy man, and yet he did not give gifts to the poor. That's a hard start. One time, Rabbi Akiva comes upon him. Now, just for context, Rabbi Tarfon is Rabbi Akiva's teacher. Rabbi Tarfon is an older man to Rabbi Akiva. So the younger scholar comes upon the older scholar, and he says to him, my teacher, right way for the younger man to address the more senior man, would you like me to acquire for you a city or two? Now, I watched the masterful work of the clearly professional auctioneer who was selling all sorts of interesting things. But Matt King told me you're actually a real estate guy. You'd be more likely to sell a city than you would be sell but you did a pretty good job on all that stuff, and I thank you for that. That was good. Rabbi Akiva says, my teacher, 2,000 for a city, 4,000 for 2 cities. And Rabbi Tarfon is very excited about this. I don't get it. He says, yes. He stands up immediately, it says. It's very physical, the text. Stood up immediately, and he gave him 4,000 gold dinarim, which is more than the price of dinner. It's a huge sum of money, and which is like, wow, here we go. Immediately, Rabbi Tarfon gives to Rabbi Akiva 4,000 gold dinar. Rabbi Akiva immediately, the text says, he turns next and gave it to the poor. Wow, a little question there. Like, I told you I'd buy you a city, and I gave the money to the poor. Time passes, says the story, and Rabbi Tarfon encounters Rabbi Akiva. The word in Hebrew is encounter, like they bump into each other. And he says, so where are the cities that you acquired for me? I kind of want to check on my investment portfolio, right? Rabbi Akiva, says the text, takes Rabbi Tarfon by the hand. It's an unusual formulation. We don't do a lot of touching in the Talmud. It's like, he grabs him, and he takes him to the Rashi school. It says a Beit Midrash, but it's okay. It's a Rashi school. Where they found a young student, which they could find today at the Rashi school, reciting verses. And this particular verse from Tehillim, from Psalms, is a lovely pasuk. Rabbi Tarfon listens to it. And they're standing there together. It's like, grandparents' day. You can imagine these 2 altars of Canaan standing, and there's little kids saying, like, who are these old guys? And Rabbi Tarfon's listening, and Rabbi Akiva is standing there like, I hope he likes the city I bought him. And Rabbi Tarfon says to him, Rabbi Tarfon stands up. Imagine the elder was sitting in the presence of the student, and he kisses Rabbi Akiva. Again, an unbelievable image. And he says to him, you are my teacher and my guide, my teacher in wisdom and my guide in derech eretz. And derech eretz in this sense doesn't mean in being polite. It means in the ways of the world and how I should live a purposeful life. And immediately, he gave him additional money to invest. So I want to unpack this a little bit. I know it's late. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I'm going to answer them. The rousing conclusion, and we can go home. Ready? We'll start with the assertion that Rabbi Tarfon didn't give money to the poor. It's ridiculous. It's intellectually not so, right? There's myriad examples in the Talmud where we speak of Rabbi Tarfon's generosity. So what's the assertion mean? And then there's this business proposition. Why does Rabbi Akiva offer Rabbi Tarfon a city? And finally, how do we understand Rabbi Tarfon's visit to the Rashi school? What was it about listening to this one young student studying Jewish texts out loud that so reoriented this great sage's mind? So the first question about the extent of Rabbi Tarfon's tzedakah. It seems clear to me that our text wants us to understand that for leaders of a generation, you came to honor Dale and Marilyn, and that makes you their friends, but it also makes you leaders of a generation. Men and women like us, there is a distinction, and a meaningful one, between making tzedakah and investing tzedakah for transformative outcomes. They are two different things. Rabbi Tarfon surely gave money to feed the hungry and to clothe the naked. Absolutely, he did. But it took his student to show the teacher, the leader of the prior generation, that while such gifts are absolutely necessary, deeply important, and absolutely surely essential, they are not sufficient. That if we want to build a community our children will want to live in, we must invest across generations to sustain and to transform the central institutions of Jewish society, those that educate our children and guarantee our future. Rashi is built. Now we must endow it with the resources beyond the annual fund. But more than that, Rabbi Akiva offered a city for sale because he knew that no matter how brilliant a job we do at the Rashi school, Rashi is necessary to our future, but not sufficient. It takes a village to raise a child? Great. It takes a city to guarantee a worthy Jewish future for our grandchildren. Our city must have vibrant institutions arrayed around the light that's the Rashi school, from gateways to Gann Academy to vibrant shuls that welcome and inspire us. We must have adult learning programs and meaningful informal education experiences at summer camps for our kids. We have to have rich and deeply engaging Israel experiences, and we must have lifelong learning resources from preschool through college campuses to assisted living facilities next door. Who but us is going to build this? And yet, after all said and done, it wasn't the beautiful campus. The beautiful, beautiful campus. That's not what blew Rabbi Tarfon away. It was some kid reciting a verse from Tehillim. You think he'd never heard it before? Rabbi Tarfon spent his whole life learning Torah. He knew that verse. He even knew the guy that wrote the verse. I mean, he'd been there from the beginning. He heard it a million times. Cute kid, lovely, beautiful. That changed his entire worldview. Why? I remind you that I invited the Rashbam to be here with us tonight. History. Rashi, not the school, the grandfather, died on the 13th of July in the year 1104. On that date, his grandson, the Rashbam, was 19 years old. Rashi lived to see his Torah, his worldview, transmitted to, received, and embraced by his grandson. The question for me is, will I? I don't mean, will I live long enough to see generations? The Talmud tells us that no man knows the day of his death. I do mean, will the generations that follow find a worthy Jewish reality to inherit, based in some real part on the choices I make here and now in terms of building the community that they'll animate? Like you, I'm dedicated to nothing less. In the name of every Rashbam not yet born, who will be inspired by her coach or her music teacher, who will thrill to a science lab, or who will be transformed by a chesed project, and who will therefore project her light into our dark world and ensure a worthy future for your grandchildren and for mine and for hers. In the name of every such precious child, I thank you for what you've done, and I ask you for more. Moshe asked, is the land good? Look around. What you have built is a shining city on a hill. Be aware of the brave innovators and the leaders who led us to this place, and let us work to be worthy of their example. May we together find the strength and the courage to do the work with a capital W, avodah, of guaranteeing a worthy future for our generations. Thank you.